Okay. Good afternoon, everybody in Eastern Time, and good morning or good evening wherever you are. I hope everybody is doing wonderful today. We are very, very lucky to be joined by a special guest. Today we have Dennis Murphy. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Jade. Good to be here.
I am so excited that you're here. I just know you because we get to chat often and that you've become a new part of AWAI. But then I got to see your super impressive biography where you've worked for great companies like Digital Marketer and Legacy Research. And let me read this very interesting fact about you. You've written over 7,000 promotional emails that's had over 800 million emails hit inboxes and directly helped bring clients over $250 million in sales. Okay.
Now, that was a little bit of a lie because in the picture I had hair and I don't have it anymore. So I apologize for that.
So we had false advertising in
Yes.
this.
Yes.
I don't know if I look as glamorous as my glamour shot either, so I'll give you that. It's the false advertising comes with the hair,
Yeah.
but the true advertising came with those statements that I just read out, which are like really impressive and amazing. But I know that everybody that gets to that place has got to start somewhere. So let's start at the somewhere. Like, where did you begin? What was your first foray, your first step into this world of copywriting? Was copywriting even the first breakthrough into this? Take us back.
I just loved marketing in general. I remember being in like high school. I used to love the business opportunity magazines, and I was really lucky that in college I went to Ohio State. I loved marketing, so I had a marketing professor who was also a psychology professor, and we were supposed to write some papers. And one of the questions I had, I'm like, I would just love to explore like what is it about business opportunity magazines that like resonate with people. He told me to read a book by Robert Cialdini, and he said, I want you to write a paper on this. And he's like, just he's like, this is where you're going to find all the things that kind of trigger you. He's like, and I think it'll help you if you ever want to get into marketing. So he brings the psychology behind the marketing. And so that's where kind of like I was super interested in marketing, small businesses, helping like how to help small businesses grow, all those kind of things. So that's where it was kind of blossomed in college. Once I got out of college, I kind of had regular jobs. I worked in the mortgage industry, awesome mortgage industry right during the time it was exploding and imploding. But I always did marketing on the side. I love to study small business marketing. And when I was doing that, there was a gentleman I came across named David Fry, who owned a company called Marketing Best Practices. I'd studied his stuff. I loved his stuff because I want to work with small businesses. And I always did it on the side. I'd go like door to door doing marketing stuff, asking if they needed help. I was just trying to figure out how do I break into any of this, when I can do a mortgage job, pay as well, but I love this passion over here. One day I was at a marketing conference I just went to that was in Orlando because that's where I lived at the time. And as I was getting on an elevator, this really tall gentleman walked in, and it was David Fry. He wasn't a speaker at the conference, but he just walked in the elevator, and I introduced myself, and he's like, I'm David. And I'm like, I know, I own all your stuff. And he's like, well, let's talk. And then for 2 days at the conference, him and I just sat next to each other talking about marketing and small businesses. And he said that, about 2 weeks later after that, it's just cool to meet him, like kind of like he was like my indirect marketing guru at the time. At the time, I had also been studying copywriting through AWI. I had taken back in '99. I had gotten the six-figure accelerator course based on the.
Hold up! I mean, Dennis, you have got to be like an OG because we were founded in 1997. So if you came in 1999 and took the accelerator program, that means that's like back in the day when Katie's mom Kathleen was like working for like. You an AWAI OG. Okay, I love that. Okay,
I don't know if they're still mailing out like the monthly little parts of the thing, but I've got the big binder around here somewhere still. And I'd just started that. I was just my first forays. I'm like, what is copywriting? How do you sell to people online? And so it all kind of started there. I met Dave, and then 2 weeks after that conference, he called me up and said, hey, would you like to move to Houston? I'd love to hire you. Well, at that time, we've got family in Florida. Everything's good. I was like, well, it didn't really make a lot of sense. And, I was nervous. I was really young. And I was like, well, maybe in the future. Fast forward 2 years, the mortgage world has imploded completely. I'm one of probably 5,000 unemployed mortgage people in Orlando. I've sent 500 custom resumes, zero response. I just call people that got mortgage on my thanks.
Wow.
So I realized I had to do something, and then kind of money's dwindling. We have a 5-month-old baby. And we're like, what are we going to do? We just going to like lose everything? In the middle of the night, I sent an email to Dave Fry. It said SOS. I was like, I don't know if you have any clients that need someone to do marketing, but maybe I could do it virtually. He wrote back a couple hours later, I still want you in Houston. When can you start? So 30 days later, we sold everything we owned, took our 5-month-old, moved away from 100 family members, and started running a business wing of his company in Houston, Texas. So,
oh my God. I mean, I knew you worked for David. I didn't know that is the way that you got into it.
yeah.
But I think there's a lot of lessons there. Like, first off, you had this in you, right? That you knew what you wanted, even though you didn't follow it straight off the bat. And even when an opportunity presented itself, you didn't even follow it straight off the bat. Did you stay in touch with David over those 2 years, or was it complete?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. At the time, he was involved with the company. Like, he had his own company, but he was working with like Send Out Cards, which is kind of like a network marketing company at the time, and he was using it to like get business for people. So I was still using that to also set up clients on and help them get referral business and all that kind of stuff. I was doing the copywriting for the cards, and I constantly kind of just always stay in contact. And then, but I was never asking for help or anything like that.
It's so good, because this is actually common themes that I've been seeing in these lessons recently. Michael Katz talks a lot about this. First off, like, find out what you're good at. You obviously were good at marketing before you even got into it because it triggered something within you. And secondly, just keeping those contacts alive, like all your connections alive. Even if you don't want something from them, it's not about that. It's just about, keeping that communication open for when the time comes when you're like, SOS,
Yep.
I needed something.
Yep.
Hopefully, like, anybody listening never gets to the SOS stage. But regardless, that's super cool. So what did you do for David?
So David brought me in to basically run his telesummit wing. So basically at the time, no one was really doing these big telesummits. Like, it was brand new. And Dave's like, I think there's something here where he's like, I just finished, and I don't know if he had done the Twitter telesummit. Basically, like back when Twitter marketing was a huge thing, when it was first emerging, basically he'd interview, say, 10 to 15 experts in different areas of Twitter. Then he would have a sales page. Someone would opt in for free. You could listen to it for free. Then they'd upsell them on their recordings and some back end stuff. And so David had launched one. He's like, I can't do this by myself. And so when I came in, I was going to be in charge of like lining up speakers, getting all the recordings done, make sure the website, like the sales cap, everything got done. I'd manage that process. Once we started, Dave's like, hey, I'm busy. I don't really have time to invite all the speakers, so I need you to do that. I don't have time to write the copy for the sales pages. If you can do that, I need you to write the emails. So basically, it turned into doing everything. And so it was kind of one of the things. It's like, well, I better learn what I'm doing real fast. And so I just start writing really ugly copy headline. Every speaker had a headline and bullets of what you were going to learn. There's an overall one. Then there was a tech guy to set the stuff up, but we had to set up everything: the payment processing, all the emails that would trigger. I had to think through the whole process of from A to Z. What someone's experience when they come in? What are they going to read? How do I get people? Dave had a list, but what do I have to write to get them to join? Or, and so figure out the upsell process. What else are we going to sell them? And so I was like, I hadn't written copy like that. I hadn't written emails like that. I just done some experimental things, but that was for personal stuff, which had no list and made no money. But now I'm like, if I don't do this, then we don't get paid. And then I go back to Florida. And so like we just started writing copy. I would send it to him and he would mark it up and he would send it back. And so it was basically like a real life MBA. Like, I just full into the fire, and slowly over time, as we do that, we would do one telesummit a month. So every month we're interviewing 10 to 15 people, and every month we're launching a brand new one. Ooh. So we just had to be on it. And what's really funny is that my wife had a background in counseling, and when Dave met her, was talking, she had all these great questions. He's like, I don't have time to do these interviews. He's like, will you become the interviewer? So next thing you know, Marisha's doing the interviews. I'm doing all the copy and all the sales and setting everything up. So we just churn these things out at night. So and I think we did in 2 years, we did like 26 telesummits.
I thought you were going to say that she was like counseling you through the stress.
Oh, I mean, she definitely did that too. But so that was, and then so I just got, I just learned on the fly. Like, I'm sending these emails out. And then we start seeing like, how are they selling? Okay, well, this angle worked really well. This angle didn't. So I just start paying attention, like, as I'm writing them. But the great thing is Dave was basically just preparing me for the real world. And he's like, at the time I was so mad. I'm like, I have Dave is one of the top copywriters in the world as well. Like, Perry Belcher learned a lot of stuff from him. Like Perry Belcher
Yeah.
does that. So I have this guy and he won't write any copy. But what I didn't realize is like he was just preparing. Like he would critique it. He would make notes, give it back, and slowly over time, he's like, everything's good. He's like, just keep sending it. And then that ultimately led into, after 2 years and some of the interviews we did were some experts. They were in Austin. Some of our friends were there. And then one day, our friend Kate, who we'd interviewed a couple times, I think you might know Kate Buck Jr. You may or may not. She does social media, and I think she does a lot of work with Agora and some other companies. But she was,
Okay.
Ryan had been publishing her social media course, how to become a social media manager. Let's Get Social. And so she's like, hey, she just called me up like, hey, you guys should come to Austin. I'm like, oh yeah, we want to visit. She's like, no, you should come to Austin because Ryan Dice wants to talk to you. I'm like, Ryan Dice, of digital marketer now, but at the time it was Infomastery. I'm like, why does he want to talk to us? He's like, no, like I think you should just talk to them. And so from there, like I just got on the phone and talked to a couple of people in the office. Next thing you know, there's an interview happening. And then there's like, cool, well, we want you to join the team. So at that point, like Tell Summit to kind of we're kind of running at the end with that. Dave wasn't really doing next, so it seemed like that's why I was willing to entertain it. And then we kind of made a transition to Austin to start working with Ryan Dice and Perry Belcher. And
okay, before we get into working at digital marketing, what you did there, a couple of questions. First off, I want to remind everybody that's listening, if you have any questions for Dennis, please feel free to pop them in. I can in the comments, I can see them especially if you preference it with question. So Dennis, your only like formal training was the accelerator program, and then you learned by trial by fire with Dave Fry. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I had in the past, I had been on some like little marketing forums where people were selling products. I would try to create like a little product and try to sell it. And it's like, make $500 there. But that was it. Like I was trying to do other things with small businesses. And then when I got with Dave, I had studied so much marketing material though at that point.
Gotcha.
I'm constantly reading sales letters. I was constantly like, a lot of it was just like almost by osmosis. It was, but I didn't, read all the famous marketing copywriting books that people said. I looked through them like, when I started writing, what I would do, I think what I was good at was mimicking, for example, like Dave's style. So when you read it, it eventually started sounding like Dave. And when I would write for Ryan, I would just read so much of his stuff that I could pick up his mannerisms. And I'd be writing as Kate Buck Jr. for her products. I sort of picked up her mannerisms, and then we had Laura Betterly, then we had Ezra Firestone, and I would just pick up all their personalities. And it wouldn't be drastic changes. I could see some of their basic stuff and then just pull little bits of their voices out. And that was the key, that slowly morphed over time.
Okay, so another big lesson for anybody that's listening and aspiring copywriting. This is exactly what Sandy Frank said the other day. Just read and consume as much marketing, sales materials as you possibly can. That way, when it comes to writing it yourself, you're kind of like mimicking the style of what you've seen. Is that correct? Is that what you experienced?
And like as I was writing, kind of doing the sales letters for all the telesummits, like Dave kind of had a structure, so I followed his initial structure. So I learned how to like piece things together within the structure he had. Ryan and those guys had a whole different structure, so I slowly learned their pieces. But and I think there's a good thing about say, okay, well, if you're doing copywriting, you need to learn these 13 different things. That's cool, and it's important. But I see a lot of people get so focused on that, but then they never actually take time to write real copy or just do it, see what happens. Because at the same time, there's also going to be different voices and personalities. So what may sell for Ryan may not sell in the direct way that AWI wants to sell something or present something.
Well, I think you make a big point there again, and I'm going to keep saying this throughout. It seems like, and I hope everybody's writing these down. Is like there's a lot to learning, but then there's a huge big part to just doing, right? Like just putting it out there, just doing it yourself to get that motion and that feel for the writing.
Yeah, and like with the kind of the similar thing that happened with Dave happened the same thing with Digital Marketer at the time. But before it was Digital Marketer, it was called Infomastery, and so they were Ryan and Perry and Richard that were there, they had a bunch of different smaller companies. So I was in charge of Infomastery, which was the internet marketing division. You had a Forex division, you had a survival division, you had a bunch of different divisions. So we're all together, and we're all obviously writing for different markets. But at the time, I have Ryan Dice and Perry Belcher, two of the greatest copywriters in the world. And I'm waiting. My job was to manage the process, make sure things got built and launched. Then it'll be 5 o'clock afternoon, and I have no email for the next day to send out. So I'm texting them like, hey guys, where's the email? 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock rolls on, there's nothing. 9 o'clock finally turns into midnight. And I text them like, I wrote this really bad email and I'm going to send it and let them hear from you. And so it just happened over and over and over again where I'm like, all right, I got nothing from him. And Richard's like, hey, obviously he's like, look at this way. He's like, I'm like, I don't have an email. What do I do? He's like, well, think of it as a hotel. If the hotel room sits empty, you don't make money. He's like, what do you want to do? You want to fill the hotel room? Or you want to let it sit empty? And he's like, you better get out there and sell the hotel room. So I'd start writing emails and put them out there. And the same thing would happen. I might get a critique back. It might trigger them to actually write an email because they want a different angle. But over time, I'd say about 30 days, Ryan finally texted me back. He's like, hey, dude, he's like, just keep writing and sending. And if you did something wrong, we'll let you know. And so,
I mean, I'm guessing it worked.
It worked. But part of what we do, like, we wouldn't just send them. Obviously, at that point, I'm also looking at how are different angles working. It wasn't just sending emails blindly. It was,
analyzing.
Analyzing. I'm seeing like, okay, what are the numbers saying? Like, did this topic seem like it hit it? We start first. It would just be like sending out emails. We got to get something out. Then we're like, cool. Well, okay, if the email campaign is to be like 7 days, what do we want it to say over the 7 days? So we started planning ahead when we kind of got to the point. And a lot of times back then we were moving so fast we couldn't plan ahead. It's like we get something done, send an email. Then slowly, as we began growing up, and then slowly morphing into digital marketer, becoming, as Ryan would call it, a real company, a grown-up company, we'd start storyboarding campaigns. Like, okay, well, what are we doing? Okay, kind of like what we talked about in our email marketing certification with G. Like, we start forming like, cool, what do we actually want to have it say? So we start architecting out or storyboarding or whatever you want to call it, like hitting different points. And then like, as we're closing, as we're opening, as we're closing, we start emails more blind and then we go more specific. So anyway, we slowly evolved over time, but the biggest thing that helped was like looking at the numbers. We didn't send an email. We just, okay, did this work? Did it not work? I would also go down to customer service. Hey, what are people saying?
Yeah.
Did this email confuse them? Did the sales letter confuse them? Like, is there, oh wait, we just had 50 people ask this question. Okay, well, maybe I'll send an FAQ email then. Or have an email where it addresses that specific question. Boom, you send it out, overcame all their objections or answered all their questions. We might adjust the sales letter a bit, and boom, sales come in. So it's also listening to the feedback we were hearing as well. So not just data, but also customer service. What were they saying? Like, or did we make people angry about something? What happened? What did we miss the mark on? We did that plenty of times.
Yeah, and you know what I also like about that? I think so often within AWAI and our trainings, we talk about the writing part and the sending the emails part, but not so much, working with the client on the effects of it. And then what you can use that information to adjust and resend and just improve what you're already doing instead of reinventing the wheel every time, right? Yeah. And hang on, now that I say that, isn't that like a part of what you ended up doing, right? Am I right?
Well, which part?
So, okay, I'll backtrack. So after digital marketer, when did you how did you go freelance, and what did that look like for you?
Yeah, so that was, I was with digital marketer in 2 different sections, basically a total of 4 years. And at that point, I was just, I think we both, like, we realized, like, I wasn't going to become president. I wasn't going to do all these other things. And I was like, well, I really love this, but I also kind of, I want to explore a little bit more. And so I started just talking to different clients that I met over the years, and it kind of goes back to like making sure you have a network, like that being, and we can get more back into that, which that kind of grew over time. But just as I was talking to people, like I really liked email. I liked to write emails, and so I knew I could write emails for people really quickly. I also knew that I had created so many funnels because I didn't just write emails for them. I literally did. At one point when we were super small, basically everyone was always all hands on deck, so we'd all jump in and help different things. So we eventually grew to where we have a web designer, you have people doing the tech stuff, you have people doing the billing, all that stuff, writing copy. So, but at that point, like if I needed to set up the website from the tech side and then launch a theme and then start writing the copy and then put the copy on and then start designing it, we would, or Richard would jump in or Ryan would jump in as needed. But we did every piece of the puzzle. Like I knew, and then we started selling up, what's the upsells? What's the downsells? What kind of upsells and downsells do we make? Are we learning anything from it? Like, and what was the whole process? So I was building funnels from A to Z. And then all those guys were jumping in on A to Z. And then we're also mapping out funnels and trying to decide what people like, how are people responding. And it just came over time. Like, I also knew that I could look at someone else's funnel like, wow, you're missing all these pieces. Or we realized like we can send someone, say, you buy this product, like, hey, if you like this, would you also like this? A lot of time it was like speed and automation, like, hey, learn this thing. And then the upsell might be like, would you want to do it faster and have it automated? So that was one of our things. So we'd find a way that Or some people will say, hey, would you like more of this thing? So if it's a supplement, hey, you like a supplement? Great, buy it. Hey, would you like more of the supplement? And cheaper. So sometimes it's speed and automation. Sometimes it's more of the same, at better pricing. So there's different ways that you could do that. But what we also learned is, well, we get people to buy initially, and then that was it. Like, well, we also realized, like, well, what if we triggered emails off the ones that they didn't take? Like, hey, saw that you bought this, so glad that you bought it. But hey, I also noticed that you didn't get this. And if you really want to get the most out of this, you should really do this. So we'd have an email campaign that goes out to basically bring them back to every piece of the funnel they didn't take. So we might have a campaign, but then after that, we have automated emails getting over the next couple of days, getting more shots of those upsells. So as I began, seeing other people's funnels, were like they were missing lots of pieces. So that's extra options they could have on their upsells. That was extra emails you could add into their campaigns. There's extra copy that's needed. So as someone, I started going from just running copy or emails to copy throughout the funnel and emails all throughout the funnel, including things that trigger out. Then it's adding them to a newsletter. Oh, cool. Now you can do an email newsletter. Now you can promote more products. So as you get your fingers in all that stuff, then the jobs and other things start expanding. And so that's where I started getting into some of that consulting on strategy and how to build out the missing pieces of their funnel. Basically, they've got hidden money sitting there. Just add the emails on, add this extra upsell on, trigger this thing down here that if they like this, and a week later, it's going to automatically trigger this email series that goes out.
So did you find it difficult or nerve-wracking at all to transition to freelance, or was it a slow transition for you?
I started doing that while I was still there, just on the side.
Okay.
And they knew that. Like, the one thing about them is like they're just like, hey, we expect people to be entrepreneurs. Like, we're hiring entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And so I just did a little bit that was manageable, and then eventually, I made the transition, and it was absolutely scary because we had at that point our second girl. And I was like, oh, but I just knew it was time to make a move. It was hard. And it was up and down. Like sometimes you have great months, other times like it gets a little nerve-wracking, but it's normal. I just realized that I kind of wanted my own business. I wanted to be able to spend more time with girls, and I just wanted to kind of explore more about was I any good in these other areas, and did enough. And we also wanted flexibility, so it was hard to make the decision because there's a certain amount of security that it feels nice. But at the same time, then there's a lot of growth that I was missing out on by just being an employee, and like I said, that 250 million sounds super impressive, but that didn't go into my pockets. They paid generously, absolutely. But it's also, I was also realizing how much money I was making for other people. I was like, I'd love to have a little bit bigger piece of that myself. And so that's what I started doing. Just offering email copywriting, email marketing, funnel designs, strategy. So I just started looking at the things I was good at, started offering, and then kind of getting feedback from, dude, what were people really liking? And I could knock out email campaigns fast now. And so sometimes I would sell it just for like a couple $1,000s, or other times I'd charge less and get a piece of the action depending on stuff. And it's just, that's in that area, it's kind of one of the things you have to figure out yourself. There's no like rules. There's no like, every single person you talk to is completely different. And one thing I did learn recently that I really kind of, I think has helped out a lot, and depending on where people are at that are on the call, is there's a lot of people that will write for like one-time copy and they get one-time payments, or maybe they get retainer copy, but you're still writing one-offs and stuff. Is one of the things I look at is sometimes I've talked to a lot of people that are certain niche areas. One thing you do is you might be able to write email campaigns or blog posts if you're good at blog posts. That's good informational copy, but you can also bring a copywriter angle to get them to take action. You might find a niche where you can take the same thing and license that content to other people. So you may write an email series once, or maybe you write it once a month, but you might sell it to, 50 doctors or dentists. A dentist that wants regular blog content, he wants an email newsletter, he wants social media content. You could literally create, rather than saying, I'm going to work with this client and he's going to pay me $500 or $1,000 a month to create it only for him, you could sell the same amount, but license it to 100 other, chiropractors, right? But you could it'll be customized slightly with their information, but you could literally take your one email and say, cool, this email newsletter goes out to him and this person and this person, and you could sell it as many times as you want.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've heard talk about that. So you're doing that now?
Yeah, I've done a lot of that in the past, where I've, kind of created like an email either monthly or, Let's say email newsletter. It's not
Yeah.
even a newsletter in the traditional sense. It's literally just an email, like a once a month update, and you can write it and add the different. If it's chiropractor, add their information. Or some people want it weekly. That's cool. A blog post a month or a week, you can write that done, and then you package it up and just shop it around the different ones. But you wrote the content once, and you can multiply it as many times as you want. And that's where I think a lot of people lock themselves into. I've got to find this $5,000 a month client, and something, that's a nice payday.
Yeah.
Also, if they ever decide, hey, we're good, you're like, oh wait, there went my $5,000 a month client. So I try to sprinkle some bigger paying clients with some retainer clients or the smaller content clients where they might pay 500 to 1,000 for a small package, but I just get 20 of them, 30 of them, 40 of them. And now it's
Okay.
If you lose one or two, then it's okay.
I like that a lot because it's adding a variety. Dan Kennedy talked about this a lot, like not a single revenue source, so that's very similar to what you're speaking about here. We have two questions here. One is really long from Patricia, so I'm not going to put it up yet. I was going to cut your head off, but let me try and read it. As someone that's trying to break into the digital marketing, freelance copywriting, what is the minimum experience or training certification completed before taken seriously by somebody that's hiring? She has a robust background in tech writing, lab experience, progress reporting, science classroom teacher. So she has a very good background. So for you, what have you found when it comes to people hiring? How much do they look at official training / experience in the field?
0%. Your willingness to pick up the phone and contact them, or maybe kind of like one of the things that we talked about with G and even Nick on the chatbot course. Is that if one of the ways that G got in a couple ways, like, hey, you can write an email or two for them. It's like, hey, I got on your email list. I saw this welcome mail. Like, hey, here's some ideas on how I can make it better. Or don't even say make it better, but hey, I got some thoughts on changing it up a bit. Or hey, I got this welcome mail, but I also wrote some other emails that maybe you could follow it up with. This second email gets them on your podcast. This one gets them over here. But hey, I'd love to give that to you free of charge. And so now you're putting yourself out there ahead of time and letting them see. Kind of reminds me way back in the day when I was first out of college, just moved from Ohio to Florida. I applied for a job at a t-shirt company. And so what I did was I pulled out a t-shirt and some iron-ons, and I ironed on the cover letter to the front and my resume on the back. I made it colorful. I had a lot of fun with it, and I mailed it to them. They called me 2 days later and asked me to start.
Oh my gosh!
So it's about creativity. How do you get in front of them?
And don't you think, Dennis, as well, when it comes to breaking into these fields, that the way that you put yourself out there is also super important? Because if you're wanting to get into email, and I've said this so many times, email writing, and you're emailing somebody, that is your first example of what you could do for them, right? So make that great, like your t-shirt, make it the t-shirt.
It just sticks it out to them. And heck, you might even write an email, but you might print it out and mail it to them just so it gets in front of their face. So it's not just another email in their inbox of all the other email inboxes. And you may just print it out and like, hey, here's a sample email. Like, hey, I wrote these emails, and here's a link to where you want to download them if you want to use them. But if you create that content, people might be like, well, do I have to write a lot of emails? Well, yeah. I mean, I moved halfway across the country with a 5-month-old. Halfway, we were broke. And sometimes you just got to do some things that are uncomfortable if you really want to do it. And writing an email isn't uncomfortable. So, it just might be some time. And I think the more that you look to do that, like, hey, what did I find on their site maybe that can help improve? Like, hey, there's some stuff on the site. Like, hey, I wrote some copy for you. But also never be accidentally insulting.
Yes, I was waiting for this. Like, be a nice human about it. Don't be
like, hey, I saw this on your site and it sucked. So, hey, I don't know how many emails I got from people like, hey, this email totally sucked. You should, here's what I would have done instead. These guys were trying like, hey, in case you want more copy like this, I'm hireable. Well, I'm the one that wrote the email. Yeah. And something, I'd probably agree. It probably did suck. However, when I looked at sales, it did really well. And, so I'm not above criticism either, but there's a way you can present yourself. Like, hey, like I just, I saw this. So you might not rewrite the welcome mail, but you're like, hey, here's a couple ideas. Like I saw that you had, a Facebook page, and I saw that you had on a YouTube channel. So, hey, I thought, hey, here's some other emails that if someone opts in for the first time, they get their welcome mail. Maybe these are some follow-up emails, like introducing your YouTube channel. So you're building your subscribership.
Yeah.
You're doing a podcast. Hey, here, tell them I wrote an email introducing them to your podcast. And people are like, wow, that's really cool. Now I can add that in. We can build. And so you found a small gap maybe, and you used an example of like how well you could position them and benefit them. And I think it's a great way to get in front of someone. So, and at that point, they're just going to look at what you wrote, and then they're going to want to pick up, then they're going to want to learn about you.
Yeah. I think not only that, Dennis, when you do that, sometimes like it might not even be, I'm trying to think of how I can say this. The reason that you're reaching out for the certain job that you're reaching out for or trying to get might not even be the thing, but they have a gap that they're trying to fill. And then they look at you and be like, hey, this person knows our stuff. They're a fan of ours. They know what they're talking about. Maybe we could use them in this gap, and you get in front of them like that. And I think that is.
You never know what. And I've had so many different things open up like that. I thought these other jobs that I had were going to be for running and managing things. Instead, that I became an email and a sales letter copywriter out of it.
Yeah. Because
they needed it. And then I learned how to build websites and funnels and all that stuff. And that just came with it. I mean, back in the mortgage industry, way back in the day, I spent 8 years in the mortgage industry. I went in as a temp to fax and file because I had just moved to Orlando, and I was really good at it. It was funny when you come in with a temp agency and you're like you're watching. They have 5 people hired, and by the end of the day, 4 of them have wandered off and never come back. And you're consistent and do this stuff. Next thing you know, like, hey, we like you. You're good at this. Next thing you know, I'm a closer in the closing department. Then I become on the underwriting team, and then I become like one of the best on the underwriting. Like things just start happening when you show up, and you're willing to be open to what things happen. If you want to be an email copywriter, cool. You may start there, or they may like you said, you may like that. But actually, are you able to write blog content? Because emails, we got someone put, man, we really need content on the blog. Are you open to that? Yeah. I've written so many blog posts, over my time too. I've written white papers. I've written lead magnets. I've written all that stuff over time.
I mean, I got to say, so Christopher has a question that I'll get to in a second, but that's literally how AWAI found you as well, right? Like you're a likable character, obviously. I didn't want to set you up for failure in the beginning of this, but you are king of dad jokes too, which I'm a fan of. But you had worked with some of our colleagues at Legacy, and they remembered and knew and liked you, and were like, hey, he would be a great fit here because of the personality type, even though it's not like we said, can you come and help it and look at our funnels, So, and keeping those connections, being likable, following in on niches and things that you are enjoying and following their content. So huge lessons, I think. I think everybody would be shocked at how far being nice and kind gets you in any industry, including this one. But Christopher, go ahead, and then I have a question from Christopher.
No, I think being willing to put yourself out there too. Like, sure, like you're like, well, I could never move halfway across the country. Totally get that. Like, I don't. 99.9% of people would never make sense for. But I'd also gone to like locally. I went to any marketing meetups I could find. I went to all these internet marketing, little conventions that were in town. I just put myself out there. It's like, oh, it's things down at Disney. I got to go there. It's like $50 to get in. I don't know anyone. I was scared. To go to my first ever internet marketing convention. But I started meeting people. There's like 1,000 people there. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing here. I felt like an idiot because I was by myself. The second one I went to is where I met Dave. But as I went there, I met a couple other guys there, and we were still friends to this day. That was 15, 20 years ago. We're still Facebook friends.
I think it was longer than 20 years ago, but
I don't know. That was a full head of hair ago.
So I mean, I love that, because I think getting yourself out of your comfort zone and putting yourself out there is going to get you ahead. And not only that, that SOS email to Dave, I want to remind everyone, was literally like your 501 email, because you had sent 500 of your mortgage ones, even though it's a different industry. It's never like 1 or 2. It's a numbers game, like you got to do math, and something is going to work out. Christopher is asking how you got into legacy research, if you can share about that with us. So I skipped that part of your journey, but after digital marketing, you went to legacy, right?
Yeah. So we were, digital marketer, I had been working on my own for a couple of years at that point now, just doing like consulting, coaching, client work, all that kind of stuff. And then over the years, as you know, every year Digital Marketer holds Traffic Conversion Summit,
Yes.
and so I had been going to those. I met a ton of friends. Though basically, I started a Digital Marketer when they held the very last TNC Summit in Austin. At that point, it's still only 250 people large.
Wow.
And I met a guy named Fernando Cruz there. Met his wife Gabby. We
Yeah.
got along. We got along with my wife, and so we just became friends. Stayed in contact over time. Fast forward a couple years, where my other friend Chris Daigle, who would work at Digital Marketer, he had been working with Agora Financial for a long time, and he's like, "Hey, you should fly up to Baltimore and meet these guys." And he'd been asking me for a couple. I was like, "No, I don't want to go there." He's like, "Why would you want to go?" I'm like, "Well, they're probably you told me in the past, people want to hire you if they bring you up there." And it's like, "I don't want to move to Baltimore." And I said, "I don't want to go because I know I'll like it, and then it'll be a torture." But they got me to come up, and I spent a couple of days just they wanted me just to look at their funnels, look at a couple of the funnels, let me know what you find. And I had found, like, the first day I was there, I found a gap in their email where they were paying for emails to come in, whether it be affiliate emails or just they were driving millions of email opt-ins. And if someone didn't buy, they put them in a cart abandon sequence where like, "Hey, you sure you don't want to buy it? You sure you don't want to buy it?" What I found with them is at the end of those 3 days, if someone didn't buy, they threw the email in the trash.
Wow.
They forgot to connect them to the newsletter. And we calculated that they had thrown about, at that point, 1.5, 2 million emails in the trash. And based on their numbers of what each subscriber was worth, it was worth about $80 million a year to them.
Wow.
So we were going to try to fix that patch, and so they could maintain that money. After that, they wanted me to come join them, but they had sent me to TNC as part of their crew. Ran into Fernando again. So Fernando's now part of Agora. He was part of their legacy division.
Yes.
In Florida, in Delray. And he's like, "Before you say yes to them, talk to me." So he flew me out to Legacy, and he's like, "You want to be in Florida? Your family's here." He's like, "You don't want to be stuck in Baltimore." And I love the team in Baltimore is amazing.
Yeah.
But he was convincing about, you don't have to be in the cold weather and you're near family. So we picked up and moved the family back because we were already talking about moving back to Florida anyway. So this is the perfect opportunity. So spend a year with those guys on the front end team, and love those guys. But even then, I was like, after about a year, I was like, man, I realized that I love working with a team, but not necessarily full blown employee.
Yeah.
And so spent a great year with those guys, and they're amazing. But that's kind of what brought me over to the legacy wing, was getting hooked up with, the mothership, Agora Financial up there.
Yeah.
And again, it just came through connections. It came through. I had met Fernando. That was like 7 years earlier. Chris Daigle, I worked with him in Digital Markets 7 years later. It just, as you get to know people, you may or may not find ways to partner with them. And learning from Fernando was amazing, because he took webinar marketing from the internet marketing world, where people are like, "Oh, if I did a $1 million launch with a webinar, it's amazing." He takes it to legacy and basically introduces webinars into the Agora sphere and does $50-100 million in sales.
Wow. I mean, okay, so then that's going to go into our next theme that I want to bring up with you. But first of all, I want to say to everybody that's listening, they're like, "I don't know anybody in marketing and I can't network some." Yep. I've heard of so many people's clients, their first client is somebody that they know, and it's not necessarily because they were in marketing. It's just your network and keeping in touch with your network. I can't say enough about that. Okay, so everything that you have spoken of, Dennis, to me, you're always keeping up with things. You know what I mean? You're always, what's coming next? How can I fix what's new? What do I need to be in line with? So how do you stay on trend or stay ahead of trends when it comes to digital marketing? Any tips for anybody listening on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, conferences were, obviously being part of a company that hosts those conferences was amazing. So once a year, I'm definitely, so I would encourage anyone, Traffic Conversion Summit. A lot of time, I think they're doing it, online this year. And I think if you go to trafficconversionsummit.com, I think you can probably check it out. Obviously, boot camp with you guys. I don't know if it's digital, or
we're going in person boot camp. Yep, but we're holding summits as well all throughout the year that I recommend for people. But yeah.
If you're in a specific industry that you want to be in, look at everything that they're doing. Are they holding trade shows? So if you're like, "Hey, I want to become an email copywriter, but I want to do it for chiropractors." Well, guess what? They're going to have associations. They're going to have regular local meetups. They're going to have national meetups. They're going to have all kinds of things. So if it's by target or by like an industry or niche, like, go to those events. And if you want to stay up on the trends, what are the top marketing companies that are teaching this stuff? It's going to be AWAI. It's going to be Digital Marketer. It's going to be, HubSpot and all these other ones. And what I would do is I would sign up to every newsletter in the industry that you want to be in, or in the one you want to serve, and the one you're wanting to learn from. Like I just have, and you might have to set up a separate email for that if you don't want to flood your personal inbox. And I've got several email inboxes through Gmail, and I've got nothing but, some of them are just swipe copy. I've got tens of thousands of emails are sitting there. I'm like, oh, I want to check this out, and I'll have one set up by, say, industry. And if I just want to see what's going on, I'll just kind of see what people are saying. But I'm constantly educating. I'm subscribed, and I pay for lots of newsletters. And but I'm also a geek. I love this stuff. I've always loved this stuff. So
I know, but that is something that is a trait that we have found as a common thread too. I feel like I've been saying the same thing on these like for the last month, because that is something that has been said a lot. Is like, you're curious, right? You're researching, you're staying on top of things, and not scared of signing up for those emails. And I think that's brilliant what you suggested for signing up with different accounts, so that you basically have an account that's a full swap file then per industry, which I love. Yeah. So I know there was somebody like Patricia that was interested in getting in touch with you and things like that. What are you doing next with us at AWAI for anybody that is interested?
Yeah, well, it's really cool because you can give us the exact start date, but we're going to run the second round of the chatbot marketing certification course with Nick Usborne. And what's really cool about that, I know I mentioned earlier about how you can kind of like, if you could kind of take your copy and maybe like templatize it or sell it to multiple people. What's really cool about the chatbot course is like, you're not just creating chatbots, but like Nick teaches you how to create the foundation where you could literally take a chatbot you wrote once, and he gives an example of a coffee company. Like my wife has a coffee company. You can write it once, but 90% of that you could sell to the next person, and then the last 10% is tweaking it for them. So there's a lot of good money in creating these chatbots for people. And you could, if you really wanted to, instead of just doing one client or two clients, like you could literally take out a niche or an industry that you want to take on. Say you wanted to be chiropractors, you could write a chiropractic, chatbot on how to bring in new clients, or get new patients or whatever, and you could sell it as many times as you wanted. And that's what I think is really cool. It's so duplicatable, and that's what Nick is really good about teaching, is not just how to like do the copywriting side of it, but then you learn a bit of the tech, and you can learn the parts that you want, and then you can sell as much as you want, which I love. So I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that if they follow that path are going to be really putting themselves in great position for 2021, because chatbots are. Every time I go now, I'm seeing chatbots everywhere, and the people that are doing it right now. There's also a right way and a wrong way to do it. You could probably see like on Facebook, there's ones that are just like blaring in your face, and they don't know how to follow up. Nick teaches you the right way to do it, which is, so you're not putting a company in a bad position. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And Nick's obviously teaching the right way, where I wouldn't be a part of it because it's really important. You can really turn people off. You can really turn people on. And Nick shows you a way how you can really power a business through it, and how you create a whole business model around it. So that's what I'm excited. I'm glad we're in the second round and kind of really see the creativity that comes from it.
Well, Dennis, I'm so glad that we found you and that you're in our world and a part of us. My favorite type of people to work with are ones that are not only in our programs, but they give so much to our members, and they care so much, and they're so generous with what they've learned and their ideas. They have an abundant mindset rather than a scarcity mindset, and that really is you. So and Joan must have been in our last class. The chatbot course is amazing. Definitely recommend it. Thank you, Joan. Whoopsie. Yeah. He has another question. Okay. When you say you use the sort of same content while duplicating it for clients, is it not a conflict of interest? So when licensing, what is sort of like the rules and regulations on using the same content in multiple places?
Yeah, I mean, I let people know, like, hey, just like I've got this content package that you can purchase access to, and we use it for all of our clients. It'll be customized for you. If you want custom content, then we're going to probably add a zero to the package. So what would you like? Would you like the affordable package? Because if they say, well, what about selling it to 10 different chiropractors in the same town? Well, great, to sell it to one in each town. People aren't going to be like, wait a second, I thought I saw that email from that person over there. What is going on here? One thing that we're great at is talking ourselves out of things and finding reasons not to sell something valuable to someone. And so those are natural questions, and no one cares. At the end of the day, if they truly care, say, if you truly want custom content, awesome. I will be happy to do it. I'm going to charge you for it. And it's going to, and at the time they're like, oh no, I'll take the good stuff, because they never get complaints about that once they use it and do it. Now, if they're not side by side, or if you're doing the same thing to the same town or whatever, and everyone, like there's like 87 chiropractors and they've all got the same content, then maybe someone might notice. But how many thousands and thousands of them are out there? Take it to the next business. How many thousands and thousands are that one? If you become known in that, they don't care. Does it get results? Does it get them clients? Does it make good content? Like Facebook loves content. So can you make 2 posts a day for them? Well, guess what? If you're doing it yourself, and you're automating, it's gonna stink if you're doing it one by one with clients. But if you create it once and multiply it and automate it, you can have endless amounts of clients. And you can really, I've literally set up social posting for 5 years worth of content in less than 10 minutes for people. Never touched it again.
Woo! Okay. But I mean,
don't make
so
it harder
I
than
think.
it needs to be.
Pardon?
Don't make it harder than it needs to be, and don't psych yourself out about it, because they don't care.
Yeah.
And if they want custom, charge them for it.
So I mean, they know up front you're not duping anybody, that this is reusable content. And obviously, like if there's 2 doctors in the town and they're direct competition, I doubt that that's the market that you're going for. You're going.
And I've had people say, like, and I've had friends I've never had this come up, but I've had friends like, oh, well, I created this content. And the guy says, well, I want exclusive rights. Like, cool, then I will charge you for exclusive rights in this area. That's easy. You just pay extra. That's it.
There you go. Yeah. If they don't like it, then there's the option B for them. I love that. Yeah. Marianne was in our course too. She said, Ditto Jones comment, great course. So that's on the chat box if anybody's looking to see Dennis in action anytime soon. So Ellen, who's new to digital copywriting and would love to network in, and we have great groups. So please join any of our public groups. There's a lot of wonderful people in there. And Jeff is in the next chatbot copywriting course. Excited. We are excited for you. Woohoo.
Oh yeah.
And Michael really likes your idea of licensing and setting up. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even know that was the direction that we were going to go in today, but I do love it, because I think that anything that's scalable, which is awesome, it also leads you into the path of like higher income if that's not what they want. So I love that. I love the message about networking. I love the message about keeping on top of what's happening in your industry and how simple that is. It's not about having to make any big new purchases or buying. It really is just about signing up to newsletters and emails and blogs. And so, Dennis, I got to think about more nice things to say thank you to for you and about you. But it's been so fun to talk to you as always. And
this is fun. I love this stuff.
We start in like 10 days with chatbots, something like that. So I will see you there for that. And I'm super excited.
All right.
Okay. Bye, everybody.